Hey everyone, welcome to Grafton Custom Woodworking. So a while back I did a backdrop for a friend for a baby reveal, and shortly after that a local church group that I go to here asked that I would do two of them for them. Well, they recently reached back out to me and wants me to do one more. And so if you look back here, this is one of the ones that we did a while back. And we're going to pretty much do the same thing. It's going to be a little bit taller because the other one that I did was a little bit way tall up here, and we're going to do one in the middle, so you got three different tiers. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this one that we have and just basically make sure that we get the same curvature. We're going to put it on a piece of plywood and draw it out, and then we'll cut everything the size what we need. So let's get to it. Alright, so what I did is I put the sheet of plywood flush up against the fence here on my table saw, and I put this on top of it flush. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our pencil and basically draw this line. So basically just kind of tracing it out. And that's going to give us a rough, and then I put it all the way to the edge here. That way we can kind of just get an idea of the shape that we're looking for. And right now it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get that shape so that way when we put our jig on here, we'll know about the area that we need. So make sure we draw our line how the straight where we want it. And so now we can take this part off and we'll go ahead and set our jig up. The jig that I'll be using to make this cut is Rockler's Elliptical Cut and my DeWalt DW618 Plunge Router. And so basically really what happens is I need to take a measurement from the edge to where we're going to cut, and then find the center. And then once we find the center and then come over here, then we will put this down. And they've got little pins in here that slide up and down in these grooves. And so these pins here go in here, and basically these pins right here will go in here and let that slide. And so that's how you get that circle. Now with what we're doing here, we don't want elliptical, we want actually a complete circle. So we'll stationary those so that way it just cuts a circle and not an oval. And so once we find the center, we'll bolt this down and then hook all this up. So once I kind of found my center, I'm going to take my straight edge and draw a line across this way, and then come over here and draw a line this way. So I find my center and make my mark here. And so that will be where my line, so then I can actually take my base of the jig. So once I find my center, I get this, I put my straight edge on here, and I'm going to make sure that this is straight, and then I will take my screws and put the pin in and screw it down in the holes. One bad thing about this jig is you do have to create holes in here, but this will be painted, and so we can fill those holes in and paint over it. You'll never know. So once we get that in there, then basically what happens is we will fit this in here into that hole, slide it in, and then we will go ahead and make our cut. Alright, now that we got the screws in there and we've got this sitting down, I'm going to drop the router just where it's barely touching the wood. And so I'm going to kind of just look at the bit, and I've got a straight cut bit in there. I'm going to look at the bit and just kind of go around and make sure that we are following that line that we drew earlier, that we traced from the other piece. And so looking at it, it's right on that line all the way across. So that's the mark that we need. And so we tighten this right here so that way it doesn't slide and it just pivots inside that circle. So what we'll do is we'll basically cut it all the way up till it's flush level, and then we'll rip it the rest of the way. So let's get to that. And so I will go ahead and just make shallow passes. Do it a couple of times, going back and forth, just going down a little bit by a little bit, so that way we don't cut a whole bunch of off at one time. In order to set my router bit, I'm going to go ahead and put the knob on the highest point and bring my stop up. And so I will go ahead and plunge it all the way down till it's touching the wood. I'll go ahead and lock it down right there. And then I'm going to bring my stop up just a little bit. So that way when it plunges down, it will hit that knob and I'm only going down a little bit. So I lock all that down, and then whenever I plunge down, it will plunge to that point. Now that I made that first pass, I will go ahead and lift it up and then rotate my stop to the next position, and then I'll drop it down and make the next pass over it. So the next pass that I'm going to make will actually go all the way through. So I need to be really careful because this is sitting on my table saw and not my workbench. So when I go through, I want to make sure that I'm not cutting through my table saw. So always double check whatever you have it sitting on that you don't cut through. I made that mistake of cutting my workbench before, but that's what a workbench is for. So just basically look at where it's going, making sure that it's not going to cut through. And over here on this corner, it is higher up, so I do want to pull it off a little bit, so that way when I go through, I'm not hitting that. So let's go ahead and cut it all the way through. So now that I took everything off those holes that was made, I put a little bit of glue in there and put some sawdust in it, and I'll rub it in and let it dry. Then I'll come back in and sand it down, and it'll be smooth. You'll never know. Alright, so the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my straight ruler and line up where that line came all the way out, and then I will draw it all the way across. Make sure we got a straight line. And then once I get that line established, because this is roughly about 3 feet from this side to this other side, my table saw won't go that far. I will have to use this Accu-Cut, Kreg Accu-Cut. I'm saving up for a track saw, but right now this is what we got. So I'll line these up and cut it with my circular saw. This black backdrop will have to be 62 or 72 inches or 6 feet. So I'll make my mark at 6 feet here from the top. And then I will take my straight edge, get right on that line, and make my mark there. So then once I get my mark there, I will take my saw, take this one again, and I will line it right up on the edge, right up on that line, and we will cut that. Now that we have all this cut up, what we're going to do is we're going to take our router with a small little chamfer, and we're going to chamfer all the edges all the way around on both sides. So I'll put this right here and just kind of go around. And this does have a bearing here that will ride on the edge, and I've measured out my chamfer. One thing to note is when you're coming over on these edges, you always kind of want to start here and then come up, and it's that way because the wood grain is going this way, and you don't want it to chip out some of that. So always make sure you come over here and kind of slightly back climb on it, and then you can get that so you have a nice smooth edge. Now that we have all the edges front and back with chamfer, we're going to take some sandpaper and sand it down at 80 grit and then 120 grit. And so we'll just have to make sure we smooth all the edges, make sure it's soft to the touch. Alright, so now we got the piece that's the foot that's going to swing out and keep it leaning back. We got it on from the other one, and so I'm putting it on another piece of board. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to trace it out so that way we get the same dimensions and everything as this one. And so what I did is I took the edge of this one and the edge of my other board and made sure they were straight along the edges and the top. And this back over here will have a slight angle to it, so that way it sits kind of back and it's not sitting straight up and down. So now that I got that drawn out, we can go ahead and cut this. The best way I'm thinking to cut this is I'll actually use my workbench with my match fit, and I'll put my match fit clamps in here to hold one side, and then I'll take my Accu-Cut sled and then line it up on that line that I drew and cut those lines out. So I think that's going to probably be the best bet. Alright, so now that I got all these pieces, all the different angles cut out, this one piece that we're going to use does have a sticker. I don't like the way they put these stickers, but one thing that you can do is take a heat gun and warm it up, and it will loosen that sticker up so that way it doesn't tear and some of that sticky will come off. Then we'll kind of just sand the rest of it down. And just like we did on the back drop, we're going to put the same chamfer on the leg. So in order to spray, I am going to first put the Kills 2 primer, and so I've got a filter in here, and I'm going to dump it in here and filter it. Now I got the paint in there and all set up, so this is my makeshift paint booth, and so I am going to use the Rockler HVL paint sprayer, and so I will start painting on here. I am not going to film this because I don't want paint all over my phone, so I'm going to turn it off and move my phone. I'm done spraying it now, and the coat went on it really good, really smooth finish, so that sprayer did really good. Now that we got all of this painted, I got this one and the other one painted, we're going to put this piano hinge on. So basically what it will do is we'll have to line it up on the edge, and we'll drill the holes in, and then what happens is this side here will be on the other one, and then it will fold in. But one thing with this one, it is too long, so I will bring it up and mark it to where I need it, and then I'll go ahead and cut it to that way it's the right length. Alright, so to cut it, I got my measurement on here, and I went ahead and scribed the line, and so I'll take my grinder and I will go ahead and cut it along that line. So when we use the grinder, there's created a little bit of burrs here, so we'll just take a metal file and get those burrs out, kind of smooth it down so it's not as sharp and not catching. Once we put it on here, we want to make sure there's the same distance between here and over on this side here. And then once we get that measurement, make sure it's the same, then we'll go ahead and pre-drill all the holes and put the bolts in it. So when I put this on here, I want to make sure this is flat on this face here, and then up under here it is flat against the back, so that way it makes a complete 90. And then once I kind of push it all up in there, then I will drill these holes here. So I'm just kind of making a mark right now so I can see where I need a pre-drill. I'm using one of these little pre-drill kits. It's got a little, when it pushes down, it centers it. Now I don't want to go all the way down and go through this board, so we're just going a little bit. Now that I found where this one needs to go, where the other one sits flat and right up to the edge, I kind of made my mark, and so I want to take my straight edge here and we will line it up and find that little mark there. And then once we get that, then we will drill the holes for this right here. Alright, it's all done. You see it standing up, and basically the way this is, it hinges there, and then whenever you want to put it, it comes back down. So you can see it there. Folds up, stand it up. That's the way it works, though. Turned out good. Thank you for watching, and so this is done now. I can go ahead and deliver it to the customer and have them take care of it, where they're going to do with it. But basically this backdrop here is, I've done a few of them and they've all turned out really good. I keep on getting customers come back and asking for more different sizes and stuff like that. So this is a fun build. It's easy to do, and so I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to subscribe and like. And until next time, see you later.